Hi, I'm Reid Peterson, and welcome to Grief Refuge. Thanks for listening today and trusting Grief Refuge as a resource to help navigate your grief and help you cope with your loss. If this is your first time listening, welcome. And if you've listened before, welcome back. Grief Refuge is about helping you find peace and purpose after significant loss. This podcast was created with the intention to help validate everything that you're going through, to help take time to reflect, and to honor the loved one that you've lost. Here at Grief Refuge, you will learn healthy ways to manage grief. You can also find comfort, hope, and a sense of peace in regards to your loss, as well as finding a way to embrace life and move forward. Through the stories and conversations shared on this podcast, my intention is to help you work through the heavier, more painful feelings that go hand in hand with grief. Grief is hard and it is painful. I'm glad you're here, and I promise to do everything I can to provide the best support to you. Before we begin, I want to mention a few important points. Because of the depth and the nature of this topic, it may be more beneficial to not multitask while listening. Rather, I invite you to use this time for your self-care and your personal reflection. Please use this time to settle in and relax and allow your grief-related feelings to run their course. If anything, please use this time to mourn your loss. Also, this podcast publishes episodes twice a month. And when you're grieving, that's a lot of time in between each episode, and you may realize that you need more resources to help you feel more support. If you're in a place of needing more support, I strongly encourage you to download the Grief Refuge app. The Grief Refuge app helps provide comfort and support on a daily basis. On Grief Refuge, there are daily podcasts to help validate your grief, to help you gain perspective, and to help you sort through the thoughts and the feelings that come up when dealing with loss. The Grief Refuge app is easy to find. It's a free download from your phone's app store. Please download it now to get started. Thank you, and let's move on to today's topic. As a parent, there are timelines that start long before your child is born. When you lose a child during pregnancy or infancy, the timelines often get dismissed and written off as less than losses by our society. Tears is an amazing resource that provides financial and emotional support to families that want to honor their child and make sure that they're never forgotten. On today's Grief Refuge podcast, I interview and have a conversation with a colleague and friend, Kim Freeman, who's the Arizona chapter leader for Tears. Kim shares more about her personal story and the ways that Tears helps families to honor their child. This is a must listen to. Kim's wisdom and compassion speaks so eloquently. Please listen to our conversation for more support and deeper understanding. Hey everyone, I'm here with a special guest. I got the opportunity to meet Kim Freeman at a training provided by Dr. Alan Wolfelt at the Center for Loss. And when I heard a little bit about Kim's story, I felt very compelled. And I knew I had to get her on the Grief Refuge podcast as a guest because Kim offers so much value in expressing guidance, support, care, and so many other words that aren't coming to mind right now for families that have lost children, families that have dealt with pregnancy loss. So we're going to learn a lot about Kim, her work, her great heart, and the gift and purpose and mission that she fulfills in this world. Kim Freeman, thanks for being a part of Grief Refuge.
Reid, thank you so much.
I'm glad you're here, and I'm grateful that at the time of our recording, you're dedicating some of your precious time to spending a Saturday with me. We'll just disclose that to our listeners. We work on Saturdays. And you mentioned that you've got some young children in the other room who are not feeling the best. And so let's just check in with you, Kim. How are you feeling today?
I'm actually doing quite well. Thank you for asking. I'm taking a little pause for some mom time and some time that I actually enjoy sharing and helping educate the communities. So thank you.
Awesome. So I'm going to be very transparent. Tears Foundation is a little bit more unknown to me. And I don't have a personal experience in my immediate family that I assume would be child loss and or pregnancy related loss. I may uncover a story of my sister later in our conversation, but to help us be more familiar with tears, can you tell us a little bit about what tears means?
Absolutely. Well, the Tears Foundation this year is celebrating its 20th anniversary. It is an organization that was started by Sarah Slack in Washington State following the death of her son. She experienced something no parent should have to go through just with the stillbirth of her son, Jesse. But to compound that grief, she found herself unable to provide a grave marker for him. And so she had a yard sale and she advertised it. And she said, proceeds from this will pay for my son's grave marker. And when she went to the funeral home to pay for that, she vowed that she would never, as long as she could, allow another family to have to endure that. The Tears Foundation exists primarily to financially and emotionally support families. We want to lift that financial burden from families. We offer several programs for pregnancy and infant loss all the way through adulthood, because when you lose a child, it doesn't matter what age they are, your child's your child, and they deserve to be honored in the way that you see fit without having to conform to financial constraints. The ceremony is so important to grieve the loss of a child, and we understand that at the Tears Foundation, and we want families to be able to honor their children. We also provide emotional support in the form of grief support groups and peer companions. We're not licensed professionals, most of us. We are peer companions. We come alongside grieving families, mothers, fathers, grandparents, siblings, and we help them navigate through their loss, through their grief journey, so that they can honor that child and create the legacy that they would want for that child.
Really appreciate that. And then my assumption is TEARS is an acronym, right?
Many people say that. It actually is not. It's a good
okay.
discussion point, though. It does start that conversation for us. It was originally just tears, and so it was capitalized for that emphasis, but the Tears Foundation, our symbol is a tear, and so it just gives that emphasis.
Fantastic. Now, your role, you're one of the leaders within the Arizona chapter, right?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Right now, I help coordinate the volunteers and help coordinate the programs that come down from our national office. And my co-leader, Susan, and I primarily work with families immediately after experiencing the loss, often working with the hospitals, funeral homes, and we work with providing services like working with the funeral homes for burial and cremation. We have a grave marker program, so we help families with that as well. We offer an opportunity to help families create ceremonies either immediately or days, years, decades after the death of the child. We offer events in our state. They do include some fundraising events like our annual Rock and Walk, We have one here in Arizona, and several of our states and our international chapters offer those as well. We also offer things such as our Bereaved Mother's Day event, so that mothers can be honored, and holiday events. We have some states have fathers chapters. I think it's called the Dad's Division. We're working on restarting that. I actually started with the Tears Foundation in 2011. I took a break, a personal break from my family in 2017, and just rejoined the chapter again last year. And so we're in the process of rebuilding and reimagining what the Arizona chapter can do for our families here. Every state is slightly different. We look at what our current need is, and we address those needs as they come up. We're finding out as we're reaching out more, the need that we already knew existed becomes very apparent to us, and we're no longer needing to necessarily reach out. People are coming to us for that support, and the growth of our organization just here in Arizona has grown 9 or 10-fold every year. We know that 1 in 4 women will experience a pregnancy or infant loss. And so we know that those mothers, those fathers, those families, they need and they deserve that support, the support of their families, their communities, our organization, so that they can fully grieve that child.
Really appreciate you sharing more. Would it be comfortable and okay if I were to ask how you met the Tears Foundation, and how was this introduction made to you as Kim Freeman, and also who the organization is?
Yes. In 1995, I gave birth to my beautiful son, Cameron. He lived 5 hours, and I had to have him removed from life support. Following that, I received assistance, emotional support that was based on some very predictable stages. And I was told after 6 months that I appeared to have gone through those stages well. And they congratulated me that I was completely finished with my loss grief process. And they seemed pretty happy. I seemed relieved. I thought that the deep ache in my heart and that longing and the pain that I carried every single day would somehow magically subside, and it didn't. And I carried that, and I tried to push it down with all of the platitudes that I heard from people that, at least you had him 5 hours, at least he didn't suffer, at least that he's in heaven, that the angels needed him, that God needed him. All of the things that were supposed to bring me comfort, I tried to cling to, but I couldn't grasp them. I couldn't hold on to them. They were empty to me. Like it felt like it felt like I had I felt like an empty shell almost. And I was going through the motions of life. I went through some counseling. I was told that I was doing well, and that I appeared to be doing just fine. I went to school, held down a job. 5 years later, I gave birth to my beautiful son, Christopher. He lived 1 year and 6 days. He was diagnosed at about 5 months of age with a terminal condition that I did not know I carried at that time. He went through our hospice in Spokane, who at that time no one was equipped to deal with pediatric hospice. It defied all the laws of how things were supposed to work. Children aren't supposed to die. We're supposed to outlive our children. They were ready to deal with Christopher if he was 81 and not 1. And so they met him and me with compassion and love, and they companioned me, and they sat with me, and they showed me what a good death looked like, if that's possible. I know that it brought me peace to be able to experience all of the emotions and not have them pushed down. And so it was different. It was an anticipatory loss. And so I had some of my grief ahead of time. And so they told me it might be easier. And it still was not easier. And then I was met with more of the sayings that people say, oh, at least you had him for a year. You didn't have your first son for a year. At least you've had more time with him. At least he didn't have to live longer with a painful disease and all of those things. And I thought, somehow there's got to be someone that understands what I'm feeling, someone that can help me with this, someone that can say something that doesn't feel like a knife in my heart, because it actually made things worse. And I tried to understand that people meant well, but I knew that somewhere something like that had to exist, or I would have to create it. And during that time, Sarah had already experienced the death of her son, and she was already in the process of creating the Tears Foundation. It was, I believe, a couple of years later. I was walking into a grocery store. I saw one of those signs for charity walks. I had really, I just, at that point, I was just kind of thinking I was just going to move on with things. I had to get up. I had to keep going. And I was drawn to it. And I didn't understand even what it was. I just thought, hey, I'll just go ahead, Tears Foundation. It sounds like these people might be sad. Every now and then I feel sad. Let's just go ahead and join them. And I signed up and I was there and I heard the speaker, the representative from the Tears Foundation, share what they do. And it felt like I was home. It felt like I had found what I know now was my therapeutic third. I found people that didn't have to say anything at all. And it was okay to cry. And men were crying. And dads were embracing each other. And they were celebrating their children, when I was almost shamed for sharing my sons that, after 6 months, a year, 3 years, 5 years, are you not over it yet? And here these people were celebrating their children and sharing stories and laughing about good times that they had. And I knew that I had to be a part of that. And so I started helping them in some ways, but we ended up moving to Arizona from Washington State. And I saw an advertisement that they had another walk up there. And the director said, hey, are you going to come out again? Are you going to donate a raffle basket? And I said, oh, no, we've moved. Sorry. And she said, well, would you like to start a chapter in Arizona? And I felt ill-equipped, because it felt like something that was so large and I wouldn't know what to say. And I had so much sadness and so much pain myself. How could I help other people? And she said, that's okay. That's okay. Because you get it. You understand. And they understand that you understand. And that's where we start. And that's how we started. Our first event was our Rock and Walk event here in Arizona. It's called the Rock and Walk because we have rocking chairs. And we have a fundraising walk event. We have a table where parents can bring the special objects, the linking objects that help them remember and celebrate their children. And we have the rocking chairs as a pause, but it's also an opportunity for people to rest and comfort from the rocking motion. It's also kind of a reminder, because we're always moving forward, but usually our walk is set up in a circle or something. There's not a start, a linear line to finish. We always come back to where we were. And when we do that, we remember that we're still coming back to those memories. We're still coming back to that linking table. We're still coming back to our families that are waiting for us. And when we can't walk, we rock, because we're still moving. We're still giving some motion. But sometimes in our grief, we try to move forward. But sometimes the most that we can do is just inhale and exhale. And sometimes the most we can do is take one step or pause and think or sleep. And we're still moving forward. The days are still moving forward. Our grief is still moving forward. We're still making progress, and we're still in the community. We're still part of that community, and our community is still there to embrace us. They're still available to us. And we hope that that model translates outside of our walk event.
It sounds like there's a lot of intention put into the events, not just from like a logistical or organizational piece, but also like the metaphors that are involved, like as you explained with the rocking. It's really beautiful. And so if there are different chapters in different states, when events are planned, I guess Tears is international, right? So it's not just states, it's other countries too.
Yes, it is. We have several states, and then we also have, and I don't remember all of them right now. I know we have a Uganda chapter, Puerto Rico, and our events are a bit fluid and are allowed to be coordinated at the state level. So for instance, if in Washington state, their walk is typically in June. In the state of Arizona, we would have maybe 5 people that would show up to a walk outside in June. So we coordinate with the other events that are going on at the time and our need definitely at that time. Sometimes different years, different circumstances will move it around. Our walks here in Arizona typically are March or April and October or November. Since October is Pregnancy and Infant Awareness Month, that's the common month that we do have them. And here in Arizona, it's a beautiful time to have a walk, but we also do have them in the spring as well.
Kim, earlier in the conversation, you mentioned just a small piece about ceremony. And so if Tears is integrated with a family and they help create ceremony for the honoring of a lost loved one, can you share a little bit of detail of like how that process unfolds? I'm sure it's unique based on each family, but I'm specifically curious about like how much do you representing Tears step in as like the leader in creating the ceremony, or do you take like a counselor / listening role and listen to the family's needs and then help provide logistics? Like, take us through kind of a standard protocol for that, if you will.
Okay. Well, in everything that we do here, we primarily take a companioning role. We allow the families to be the experts. And so we offer that through our peer companions. We first, usually families will indicate on a financial form that they are interested in emotional support. At that time, our national office will send out a contact for us where we will then be able to reach out to the family and kind of help see what needs they have at this time, make sure that they don't have any concerns. Definitely, making sure that their support system is there and providing an opportunity for that extra piece of support for them. We will link them with grief support groups that we offer or refer out for other support groups if they wish to have that type of support. And if we have that available, currently in the last couple of years, we've opened up many Zoom meeting opportunities. So literally anyone grieving in any state or presumably in just about any country could be connected to emotional support through our organization. Most all of our meetings are opened up. Our open support groups are opened up nationwide and internationally. And so when we're speaking with a family, we will ask them about ceremony. Typically, we'll ask them what plans they have, what they feel is important. We don't delve too much into specifics, and we to my understanding, at least at the state level, we typically don't step in and provide those ceremonies. That being said, I know our nationwide emotional support director has done that in the past, where a family has wanted something. They've wanted to honor their child, but that next piece wasn't quite clear. And so she works with several people in our organization to help provide those extra pieces. She is trained not only through Dr. Ellen Wolfelt, but she's also received other training and understands, as we all do in the Tears Foundation, the importance of ceremony. And so she will provide that, but only in as much as the families need that and as much as they want it. We do mention it to families because we feel that it's an important piece. It can be an important piece in their mourning. And oftentimes we find, even later on, usually at our events, usually at our rock and walk events, that people will share that they never had an opportunity for a ceremony. This is quite common in the case of either miscarriage, early infant loss, or much older loss. We've had grandparents come in and say, oh, if we had only had this type of support. We were told to forget about our child and move on, and we did, and we never had a ceremony. And so what an honor to be able to help these families have this, not closure, but a remembrance. It almost feels too sacred for words, really. It's an opportunity for them to grow their mourning. And I know that sounds, it's a little unusual, but it allows it to soften a bit. It allows a little bit of comfort to the heart and perhaps the soul for people to honor their child. They hear their child's name spoken several times. Perhaps they even name their child, the child that may have never had a name because they didn't know that they could. And to give them that power, to give them essentially their child back and allowing them to be included in their life instead of pushed aside is just it's truly an honor.
Could I share a small personal story with you?
Absolutely.
When I was in graduate school, what feels like a million years ago, but I think it was only 15 at the time of this recording, my sister was pregnant with her third child, and she ended up giving a stillbirth. And I remember Tayden's umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck, so I think Tayden was suffocated. And I was 2,000 miles away at the time of this happening, and all I could do was just call. And I remember talking to my sister not too long after she gave labor, and she was so, I don't even know the right words, Kim. She was so distraught and just so worn down. And I remember her using the word to describe her experience. And she said she just has never felt more empty in her life. And when you shared some experiences of losing your two oldest sons, I also heard you use the word empty. And I just find it very touching and comforting to come to learn from you that emptiness may have not even be able to scratch the surface of what it viscerally feels like. And so I wanted to say thank you for mentioning sometimes things can feel that sacred where there's just really no words to put language around it. And that experience for my sister and being on the phone with her, that came to mind as far as words not being able to describe what someone can experience. And I just appreciate you letting me share that with you, because even more recently, my mother, who just turned 70, she's on this mission to tell her life story in the form of tattoos on her arm. And she wants this tattoo sleeve, and she's gone to work. I think she's gotten like 4 or 5 tattoos done in a year. And one of the tattoos, it's on the underside of her forearm. And it's almost like a family tree of her children and their children. And one of the things that I find remarkably beautiful is that Tayden is on her arm. And it's just precious, because no one really speaks of Tayden in a larger family, as a larger family. But I'm willing to bet that some of the private conversations that my mom and my sister have are about Tayden. And then I know for a fact that some of Tayden's siblings, Carolyn, Colton, and Brenna, they talk to mom, which is my sister Justine, about Tayden. And so the remembrance continues. And sometimes I get sad because, yes, I'm assuming, but I'm pretty confident that these conversations happen, but yet I'm not a part of them. And I never got to meet Tayden, and never really got to experience some of the family connection in the loss of Tayden. It was really only the phone call that, existed for me, and then life carried forward. And so I guess that makes me think of a question for you and some of your expertise. And I was really curious if there's advice, or if there's experiences you can speak from when families or maybe just even one parent is really afraid that life will continue to move forward and everyone around them is going to forget about their precious child and baby. Could you speak to a little bit of that, please?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that is such a common fear, because after the death of a child, or after the loss of a pregnancy, if there's a good support system, there are people that have rallied around that mother, that family. And as in any loss, as time goes on, so does life, so do the people. A lot of people really don't understand this whole process, as death is universal. Unfortunately, the grief experience is not. And so without that understanding, the support system deactivates. And it's difficult as a grieving parent to reactivate that. Honestly, most of the time it's due to lack of energy. Sometimes it's a heaviness of thinking that people don't care, that they've moved on, and they've moved on without my child. When you're pregnant, when you have a small child, when you have a child of any age, from that moment that you know that you're pregnant, you have a timeline that has started. And I have to share this because oftentimes people that have an early pregnancy loss, somehow in society, and sometimes it's internalized, that it's a less than. I didn't have a child. I was only 6 weeks. I was only 8 weeks. But all of us start the same, and all pregnancies start the same. And as soon as that child is there, there's a lifetime timeline that's set ahead. And usually in the parents, usually in the mother, starts the dreaming process. For Cameron, I bought him a football. Gestationally, it was probably larger than he was. but I had it. He was not going to be able to use it, but I knew, and I could picture when he was old enough to use it, that was where we were going to be. I was ready, looking at that timeline. Once that timeline has stopped, once the child's no longer an active part of that timeline, people around us stop dreaming about that. There's no more, oh, when baby is here, oh, after your daughter graduates, once your children get married. When that timeline stops, the dreaming is still there and that yearning sets in. And that's where there's a couple things that parents can do. They themselves can keep that alive. They can keep that alive in themselves, in their families. Like you shared about your mom, that was just beautiful. It helps her remember. It helps her see all of her grandbabies together. They're all there in one place. And it's also a teaching piece for the family, for the other grandchildren. They see that Tayden is not a less than. He's not something that was there. That beautiful boy didn't have the timeline that they have, but he's no less the sibling. He's no less your sister's son. He's no less your nephew. He's just being parented differently. It's an opportunity, like the tattoo. And I see so many people. I don't have any memorial tattoos. I would probably be covered in tattoos at this point if I did. But I do see many people that will place a memorial tattoo or several tattoos. And I love that, because when words are inadequate, when you want to share in a society that doesn't want to hear, they don't want to hear that unnatural. They don't want to hear that fear, that loss of hope. They want to keep the natural order and that light in place. And anything that shatters that usually is there's a pushback. With a tattoo, oftentimes people say, that's beautiful. Can you tell me more about it? Or that's nice. Who did that? Oh, well, so-and-so did that. Would you like to know what it's about? And that's an open opportunity. It's a beautiful opportunity. They've opened up that dialogue, and that allows that family to share. It opens up an opportunity for the receiver of that to know that it's okay to honor. Maybe they didn't have that opportunity. And in a very natural way of talking about a tattoo, the person that's experienced that loss has an opportunity to say that baby's name, to have someone hear that baby's name. At that time, that baby exists between those two people. And for that receiver, they're starting to feel a piece of, it's okay. It's okay to honor these babies. It's okay to honor these people that aren't here with us. And if they've not known that, they can go into, even taking along the tattoos, they can even go into communities where there's whole Facebook pages devoted to memorial tattoos, and an unorthodox grief support group, if you think about it. But what an amazing natural way to be able to share. Creating legacy is one of the things I personally love to do. I oftentimes, when there's a loss, people will jump to wanting to make, at some point, to make a meaning, to make sense, to do something for that. I know that I had that. I know that several people have had that. I thank Sarah that she had that for the thousands of children that she's affected. But sometimes the ripple effect is really underestimated. Starting a foundation is one way that people can make sense and create a legacy for their child's memory. Doing a fundraiser, buying a plaque, or at the hospital where Christopher was seen during the course of his illness, they had fish. They had a room that was set up kind of like, it was a peaceful room, and it was set up where you could buy like a memorial, like a plaque in the shape of different sized fish. There are different ways that you can share and honor a child. Sometimes we don't see that just being with someone and that other person knowing that you know, that they know that you've experienced a loss, that you don't know what they're going through, but that you have that same deep ache, that yearning. There's still, like your sister, that heavy, that empty, that deep sorrow for that rest of that timeline that they don't have anymore. And having that peace, being able to be there, allows your child to do work through your hands and feet. All my work that I do before I go up to speak, anytime before I meet a family, I think about my boys. I think about the 8 babies that I miscarried. I'm a mother of 10. I get to parent 3 here on earth. And every time before I go, I understand that this is not of me. It's not from me. This is basically my sons, my children, doing the work to help other families that have lost their children. And it's a way to connect those children. And I never take that lightly, because I know that this is so far bigger than myself.
Appreciate all of your words and your wisdom shared. And one of the things I want to comment is that I think it's through what you say and how you say it, Kim. You, to me, are a great teacher of compassion. And so I really want to thank you for expressing compassion in the words you speak, the tone of voice you have, and also the mission you serve and the purpose that you fulfill. I think I'm going to ask one more question, and I hope with your permission, this is okay. It's not something that we've talked about, but it's based on an assumption of mine. And you mentioned in some of your own personal loss with Cameron and Christopher, I can't remember if you said embracing, but something about accepting the platitudes, or, just accepting them for being there, I guess. And I'm going to assume that in many of those platitudes that were shared with you, you might have received a compliment, and I'm putting air quotes around that compliment, about having resiliency. Does that hold true for you?
Yes, it does. It does. I was often told, you're holding up well, you're doing so well, look at you. You're able to move on, you're able to get past this. And it was, I think it's just a general of society that busy is productive. And I was definitely busy. The more pain I experienced, the busier I got. And I thought that was supposed to move things faster. I thought that was supposed to help me find what everybody told me was going to be closure. It was going to be an end. But with the amount of great love that I had for my sons, I not only was I not going to have closure, I don't ever want it. I don't ever want it. And there was a very brave front that was put on when I was able to go out. I ended up starting college. I was actually in college when Christopher died, and I was given a couple weeks off, and then I had to return to school, and I tried and I tried, and all of those what seemed to be silly, senseless things, the troubles that college students had were annoyances to me. They were irritating that people couldn't go skiing, or they had to work on a 3-day weekend or something. I couldn't find my place anymore. I had lost my title, because for 9 months and then the year and 6 days that Christopher was alive, I was mom, and I struggled. They said, "You're a strong woman." And in my head, I was thinking, I'm not a strong woman, I'm a strong mom, but I didn't know if I was a mom. And I didn't want to be a student. And so in that one moment when he took his last breath, every title was stripped down from me. And I put on the mask of bravery, and I put on that smile, and I kept trying to move it forward when I could. And when I couldn't, it was hard. It was dark. And it was a very, very long, slow walk through quicksand until I could kind of see my way out of it, until I could see some sun, until I could see some happiness, because I almost didn't feel worthy of laughing. I almost couldn't feel worthy of enjoyment. And when I finally started feeling that, people would say, "Well, see, we're done now. We can move on and we can move forward." And it felt fake, but I continued to do that, but I continued to try to find ways at home to just sit and remember when no one else would with me.
I am so grateful that you have shared your experience about that. I think it will help shed light into many who struggle with some of their own struggles, the platitudes that they may be enduring, and the projected strength of resiliency. Because I think in our culture, American culture, that can be a very dangerous word and a very dangerous idealism placed upon people, especially grieving parents. I'm going to thank you again. I could thank you. I'm going to be thanking you for months, Kim. And I really hope that we can connect again in the future. We can have you back and share more about tears, and share more about your journey, and share more about whatever you want to share about. Kim Freeman, thank you so much for being a part of Grief Refuge.
Reid, thank you so much again, and I welcome the opportunity.
Thank you so much for listening to the full interview. I'm deeply grateful for your trust in Grief Refuge and all the stories and experiences shared here. Grief and healing is important work, and although painful at times, it's really worth it for helping to heal your heart, your mind, and your soul. Remember that if you need more support, download the Grief Refuge app. It's a daily companion that is made to comfort and support you through this difficult journey. Please search Grief Refuge on your phone's app store now. Thank you, take care, keep honoring your grief, keep listening to your heart, be kind to yourself, and talk to you soon.